In this 6-minute message, I want to follow on from last time's 6-minute message, where we looked at Ezekiel chapter 36 and the fact that God promises to give us a new heart and place his spirit within us. In this message, I want to think about Ezekiel 37, the very next chapter, where we have that incredible description of the valley of the dry bones, because I think it's got something really powerful to say to us in our day and in our generation. I hope you find it helpful. Do you know, one of the things I've been thinking about quite a lot recently, in fact, actually, it sort of occupies a lot of my brain power much of the time, is what are we going to do about a church that certainly in the West is in decline, is struggling. We are faced with the threat of even more closures of churches as a consequence of the COVID crisis. And as we look at the situation, it seems on the surface to be absolutely desperate. We look in many respects to be like the valley of the dry bones. I'm not going to read the passage to you because it's a bit too long for a 6-minute message, but I encourage you and invite you to read it for yourself, because God does something in this passage that is really important for us to understand if we're going to be all that we are meant to be as Christian men and women in our day and generation. You see, God sees the situation that Israel faces. It is deathly. It is in decline. It is full of dry bones. There isn't a hint of life. There isn't a sense that there's any way that this is going to turn around about it. That's God's assessment of Israel's situation. And his solution is fascinating because he takes the prophet and places the prophet right in the center of the valley. He doesn't put him on the side as a spectator to watch what God is doing. He places him in the very center that he might participate fully in the solution to the situation as God sees it and as God faces it. And when he puts the prophet in the center of the valley, he's doing something in and of itself that is prophetic. He's taking one who has flesh and blood on them, who has muscle and blood vessels and flesh and life, and he places them as a prophetic action right in the center of the situation that seems so serious. He's using them as a down payment, in a way, as a deposit of what is to take place, because the prophet is alive to God and he's alive physically. And he says to the prophet, I want you to call forth the Spirit of God. I want you to speak to the north and the south and the east or the west, and I want you to command the Spirit to come and breathe life into this dead valley. And that's precisely what the prophet does. And as he does so, as he obeys the command and the prompting of God, the Spirit comes and the work of God is done within the valley. The bones come together, the muscle comes onto the bones, and life comes back in to the valley. And I think that's really important, because one of the things that I think is the most essential that we understand is that we are not bit players in the promises and purposes of God. We are full partners. That's what the passage is about, isn't it? The prophet is not on the side looking on while God does his miracles. He is fully participating, fully active. He is playing his part. And as I've thought about that, I've realized how unbelievably essential it is that we in the church recognize that we are the prophet in the dry valley. We are the ones who are to bring the Spirit of God, the Spirit of life, life in all its fullness, to bear on the situation that we face. We're not supposed to market the gospel. We're not supposed to try and make the church attractive. We are to invade the world with the life that God has given us. And there are a number of verses that really in the New Testament really reflect and resonate with that, aren't there? So for example, 1 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 9 says this: "For we are God's fellow workers, co-laborers." You see, God isn't using us as junior partners. He's saying, you cannot do it without me, and I will not do it without you. He's inviting us to participate with him in the solution to our society's situation. And we are to be those who are life bearers, life givers, life bringers, because he's given us authority, and this is very difficult to get your head around, he's given us authority over himself. The prophet in Ezekiel 37 is commanded to call forth the Spirit of God, to command the Spirit to come and do what only the Spirit can, but will not do without the influence and the partnership of the prophet. And then if you look at 2 Corinthians and chapter 6 and verse 1, it says this: "As God's fellow workers, therefore, we urge you to receive God's grace." And you know, Paul is claiming that position for himself. I am a co-laborer with God in this work. And just in case we think, oh, well, that's just the Apostle Paul, that's the special people, just a few verses earlier in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, it says this: "For we are Christ's ambassadors." We are his representatives. Our goal and our role is to see the kingdom come and his will done on earth as it is in heaven. There is no decline in heaven. There is no dryness in heaven. There is no death in heaven. And we are to be the agents of that on earth. Where we are set, we are to be unapologetically Christian and show forth the life that only Jesus can give by his death and resurrection. So that's my 6-minute message. I hope you find it helpful. Where is God placing you in the very center of, not that you might earn money, not that you might do your business or your career, not that you might live in that neighborhood, but that you might bring life to those around you, because that's what we are called as individual Christians and as churches to do. Hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching.